Okay, in this video we're going to make a really simple object and use some of our 3D model tools under our 3D model tab. So I already started. I hit the start sketch button. You'll notice there's a little drop down thing. You can start a 2D or 3D sketch. For now we're just going to be sticking to a 2D sketch. We're going to click on a plane. So let's click on the XZ plane. So imagine we're looking down at a table, and we're going to start making a shape. So I'm going to make something that kind of looks like a Lego, just a tiny little box, and we'll add some different features to it. So I kind of need to make a shape of my new weird Lego that we're going to make. So I clicked on the rectangle button, and if you notice there's a little down arrow. There's lots of different ways that we can make some shapes that are like rectangles, or you know, these shapes don't really look like rectangles, but they're a basic rectangular shape. So I'm going to click on the first one, which is 2 points. So I'm going to click 2 points. I like to start at the origin where the two lines meet, but you don't necessarily have to do that. You'll notice I can make it bigger and smaller, and the measurements of my square change. So right now it's 0.375 inches tall, 0.688 inches long, and obviously if I move it, it gets bigger or smaller depending on how I move it. Instead of trying to find exactly where I want it to be, I can just type it in instead. So I'm going to click or type 1. So my height is going to be 1, and I'm going to click tab, and my other number I also want to be 1. And then I'm going to click tab again or enter. And so now I have a perfect 1x1 square, which is a pretty big Lego, but it's good enough. So I'm going to hit enter, and then it pops up. You'll notice that these lines are purple, which has a meaning. And there's these weird symbols, which also has a meaning, and we'll talk about what those mean later. But for right now, we can see that this is 1 inch by 1 inch. So I'm going to click Finish Sketch, and now I have a perfect 1 inch by 1 inch square. Now I'm going to hit Extrude. So when we make three-dimensional objects in CAD, we're going to start by making two-dimensional objects, and then extrude them to make them three-dimensional. So I'm going to hit Extrude. And then I'm going to, if it doesn't automatically select it, we could click on the square that we want. But this, pick this square, and I've made it 1 inch. I can make it any size I'd like. If I click on the little cone here, I can make it taller, I can make it shorter, or I could just type in exactly what I want. So I want it to be 1 inch, and there it is. So in our previous video, I talked about the browser and how that allows us to go back and edit things and find things if we needed to. So if I click on my extrusion and my sketch, I can change my extrusion if I needed to. So if I decided, oh, 1 inch isn't right, I could right click on extrusion and then edit feature, and I could change it if I wanted to. There's lots of other options that we'll talk about. Like I could, for example, go in a different direction. I could go symmetrically in both directions. There's different things that we could do. So anyway, I don't want to change it. I want to leave it, so I'm going to click cancel. Or I could change my original sketch. Maybe I want my sketch to be slightly bigger or smaller. So I can right click on the sketch that I made, and then click on edit sketch, and I could go back and change the numbers. So if you wanted to do that, you could double click on the number. Let's make this 1.2, and then I'm going to click OK. I'm going to double click on this one and make this 1.2, and then enter. So I just made it a little bit bigger, and then that will update this as well. And then, so now to make it a perfect square, I'm going to edit my feature and make this one 1.2. So now I have a perfect square. Okay, so now I'm going to add some stuff to this. I'm going to show you what some of the buttons do, and how we can add other features. So if we imagine a Lego piece, the Lego pieces have the round part on top. So I'm going to start a new sketch, and I want to start a new sketch on the surface of this cube. So I'm going to click on that surface, and I have my circle here. So there's a couple different options. For right now, I'm just going to keep with the center option. And there's tricks for finding the center of a square. For right now, we'll just kind of eyeball it, but there's a way to get the exact center. One way that we can do it, which is pretty simple, and I can show you, this is an important button, is called the dimension button. So dimension is basically we're putting in a measurement. So I made this square 1 by 2 by 1.1 by 2. So half of 1 by 2 is 0.6. So I can click on the bottom of one side and the center of my circle, and then come over here and left click, and this is 0.625, which I know is too big because half of 1.2 is 0.6. So I'm going to make that 0.6, and then I'm going to dimension again. So I have this dimension. Let's do from this side. So I'm going to click on the side and the center and go down, and that's way too small. So I'm going to click on 0.6, and so that should be perfectly in the center. There's probably half a dozen ways to get that perfectly center, but that's one way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and click Finish Sketch. And now I want to extrude, and it'll give you the option. You could extrude the circle part, or click cancel. I could extrude the outside part. Oops, it's not letting me. So if it doesn't let you, there's reasons for that we'll talk about later, but let's just go with the internal part because that's the part we wanted anyway. That looks too big for a Lego piece, so I'm going to go down. That looks about right. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and there we go. So now if we go to the bottom, Lego pieces are usually hollow on the inside. So we're going to start a new sketch on the bottom. So we'll click Start Sketch, click on the bottom, and we could make a perfect circle like we had before, or we could do something else. I'm going to show you, for the sake of showing you another tool, we're going to click on the offset button, and let's see if it'll let me pick. Okay, never mind, we're not going to do the offset button. Let's pick a different shape for now. So let's do like a square. So I'm going to just make a random square. I'm not really going to measure it or anything. And then I'm going to click OK. So now when I extrude, I could extrude it down, but I want to make kind of like a hollow space, like Legos are usually hollow. So I'm going to click the other direction, and right here there's 3 different options in the middle. We have join, the middle one is cut, and the other one is intersect. So if we want to make a hole, one way to do it is to use the cut command. So we're going to hit cut, and then put in our dimension that we want, and then once we have everything we like, we click OK, and now we have a hole on the bottom. We're going to make a unique thing, so we're going to put a hole that goes all the way through to the other side. So I'm going to hit Start New Sketch, click on one of my sides, click on the shape that I want to make. Let's try a different shape this time. Let's do, I could do a hexagon, or let's do a triangle. So I'm going to put in 3 for my polygon here, and we're going to click in somewhere in the center. You can see a triangle pops up, and it doesn't really matter. Let's do it like that. And I'm going to click OK, and then we're going to extrude, and then I want to cut this. Now I want it to go all the way through, so I could just type in the measurement of the object, which I know is 1.2, or instead I could just go to this drop down tab and click to next, and that'll go all the way to the next feature, which is the side. So I'm going to click OK, and I should be able to see all the way through it. Okay. I think that's good for this video, and then in the next video we'll do some modifications to this.